obviously you've delivered babies, your pelvic floor and core is super weak. And I didn't know that was an entire separate specialization. And it's sad that women are not educated about stuff like this. Like, even when you go for your 6-week checkup, you're not told that, okay, you need to go to a physical therapist and make sure your pelvic floor, because women are so worried about losing weight. I think I didn't value myself enough at that point. You tend to have imposter syndrome. No matter what you do, you're like, I'm just one among many other people. I should charge this much just to get more clients. And obviously that happens. When you're charging low enough, you'll get clients from anywhere. I can definitely get a pulse of what their goal is and how they are as a person, because I do ask very deep questions when it comes to signing on clients. Is I will ask someone what their lifestyle is like. Things like, when do you go to bed, and how old is your kid? Because if you in 3 months, if you have this certain goal, given your lifestyle, it's not going to be realistic without you giving up a lot of stuff. Is it worth it to you?
Namaste and welcome to the Hustlers podcast. I'm Jay Desai, your host. Today, we delve into the inspiring journey of a fellow Desi immigrant, a mom of two who reinvented her career not once but thrice. This time though, she's found her calling. She empowers South Asian women globally to lead better lives, doing what she loves. And how does she do it? Well, join us to discover her unique hustle and hope you find it inspiring. Welcome, Minakshi. Thank you for doing this show. I want to start off by letting our listeners know about what you do.
Awesome. So I am a nutrition and fitness coach. I am also something that I'm still not used to saying, but I'm also a business owner. And I actually registered my LLC last year. And so my coaching company is focused on coaching South Asian women in nutrition and fitness. And I've been doing this for, I would say, a couple of years now, but officially and in terms of having an actual business, it's only been about a year.
So where are you from? If you can give that background as well.
I'm from Hyderabad originally, in India, and I moved to the US. I moved to Denver, Colorado in 2016 after I got married. And I came here on a dependent visa, like many other women like myself. We really love Colorado and it's become home. We bought a house, have kids here.
You also mentioned before we start recording this that growing up, you moved a lot in your childhood. How was that life?
Yeah, one of the things I'd mentioned to you as well was at home, we pretty much only spoke English simply because we moved around so much. So there was never really a language focus, even though my mom is Telugu, my dad is Tamilian, and I'm from South India. A lot of people don't believe that I'm South Indian just because of how much, most of my talking and things I do, everything's in English. I was born in Bombay. I lived in Bangalore for a little bit while my dad was working there. Then we moved to Africa for a few years. We lived all over Africa. In fact, we lived in Zimbabwe. We lived in Rwanda, which is a very remote part of Africa. We lived in Botswana. And then we moved back to Hyderabad because also my grandparents were there and a lot of family is from Hyderabad.
What was your life like in Africa? Why did you live there growing up?
So my dad worked in sales and marketing for pharma companies. And so we moved around there. I was very young then. I don't remember a lot, but I just remember we did a lot of outdoor stuff. We would drive around the mountains. We would go see wildlife. That was just like a part of our weekends. And that was just something that we did. Like I barely remember watching TV as a young kid. I don't remember. I just remember spending a lot of time outside in the yard with dogs and that kind of thing. Want to be closer to family.
You did safari and stuff already?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we did all of that. In fact, one of the most popular stories my parents have enjoyed telling people is that I, as a 2-year-old, wanted to go to the bathroom just not even a kilometer away from a herd of lions and elephants. Yeah, so that's a story my mom always tells people. They had to actually take the potty, the little potty thing out for me as a 2-year-old. And there was a lion sitting
So any memories growing up, not just in Africa, but in general growing up that you can share Any cherished memories of yours?
I would say one, like I said, just moving around and the different places we lived in, because obviously cultures are so different. I studied in an American international school while I was in Africa. It was a play school, but it was like a lot of foreigners there. And my brother too, my mom would always make this joke that my brother, when he came back to India, could only speak French because the only interaction we actually had with people in these remote parts of Africa were with like house help and things like that. So my brother actually could only speak French when we came back home.
Did you have like role models growing up? How was your life?
Definitely. I think one of my biggest role models is probably my mom, because she has really defined who I am. My dad passed away when my brother and I were very young. I was only 10. My brother was 8 years old. And so my mom has single-handedly brought both of us up with a very basic salary. My mom was one of those people who would always say, don't get into the pressure of getting married because society will first tell you to get married. Then they'll tell you to have kids. But at the end of the day, no one's going to be there to help you. So be very sure of it. So a lot of the decisions that I make in life now too is very driven by that kind of ideology of don't succumb to societal pressures, don't succumb to what people say. And I think it really has shaped who I am, because it also made me realize that, okay, just because all my friends are married at 25, I don't have to get married. I got married when I was 29, which by Indian standards is very late. I had kids when I was 32 and 35. And so I was like, I want to do it in my own time. And I'm happier that way. I can't imagine being married at 20, 21, because I was like, I was way too immature at that point.
Yeah, and kudos to your mom for that. And sorry, I know you mentioned your dad passed away, but did you have a different childhood comparatively?
Say I grew up a lot quicker, in terms of not necessarily taking responsibility, but you realize the things that are important in life. You feel like certain things are very trivial. I actually get really annoyed when people complain about materialistic stuff in the things that they say are first world problems. It really annoys me, because that people don't know there are actual struggles in life. There are things people go, there's so many other things which are way more important than missing a flight or things like that. So I would say, just in terms of how I think as a person, maybe yes. But I also think to some extent, I feel if my dad was still around, I would have been a lot more stereotypical. Oh, I'll be an engineer or architect or that kind of thing. Not necessarily because my dad was that way. My dad was very open-minded and broad-minded too. But I think it's just that when I was much younger, I was way more bookish. I would study a lot more. And I think once he passed away, I don't know if it was just something that I did to deal with it, but I got a lot more into sports and things like that.
What did you play as a child?
I actually did athletics. I did 100 meters long jump. I was actually a state level record holder for 110-meter hurdles as well for under 16 age group. And in fact, my coach used to always say, if you keep coaching, he always felt like I would be the one who made it to the Olympics.
Wow.
Because but it's also one of those things in India where there's just not that infrastructure for sports. And the moment you got to 10th grade, they cut off all the activities, any sports and things like that. So it died out, and then so it died out, I would say, after that. And I lost track, and then I went to college, and that's probably one of my biggest regrets in life, is not pursuing that line.
Got it. Now, talking about your life in US, right? You said you moved in 2016, almost 8 years ago. So what did you do?
Unlike a lot of people, for me, moving to the US was great. I actually like the lifestyle here. It is harder, obviously, because you do have to do everything yourself. You don't have the support of family and all of that. But as a woman, I feel a lot more safe here. Yes, there's issues with gun control, etc., etc. But I feel as a woman, for me, that's a huge thing. And having a young daughter myself, for me, being here, I really enjoy my life here. And it was after I got married. So obviously starting your life with someone here, and that whole thing of setting up your own home, and it's all a different experience. And so when I moved here, I was on a dependent visa, so I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. And for someone like me who's worked since I was 21 years old, it was Very frustrating. I hated being dependent on anybody else for basic things. And of course, I had my own savings, and my husband's great. And he'll be like, he gives me a card. Like, I've always been that kind of person that no matter where we went, I would always split the bill with somebody and with friends. And I don't like people paying for me. So even simple things like that really bothered me. And it was only last year that I got my EAD. And I was like I said, that was when I actually was able to register my business.
What did you do back in India? You said you're working since 21.
So when I finished college, so I did my BCom, and then I did a diploma in broadcast journalism from the Asian School of Journalism, which is based in Chennai. And I started working with NDTV Profit. And so I was a business reporter for over a year, and I did a lot of like big stories, that whole Satyam scam. I actually reported on it. I broke a couple of the stories. And that was a field which is very different from where I am now, but that's where I started in terms of work. That was my first big job. I was paid 20,000 rupees a month, which was huge for me, like to be able to earn. And this was what, 2008 to 2009. Yeah. So to actually have my own money, I immediately started investing. I would invest 5,000 rupees a month in mutual funds and stuff like that. But that's the field I was in. But I only worked in NDTV for 1 year because I could not take that. It's so different from what you think. I thought, I want to be a journalist. But then when you actually in the industry, you realize how cutthroat it is, what a rat race it is, things that people do to climb up the ladder. It was just not for me. And so I quit within a year. And then I did some freelance writing for like local magazines, for Wow Hyderabad, which is a local city magazine. But I would say none of it really made me passionate about it. And then I realized that from the writing that I actually like the creative aspects of working. And then I happened to get a job in an animation company called DQ Entertainment, which is also Hyderabad based, as a script editor and creative manager. So a lot of my work involved developing new animation show concepts for the company. And that was a job I really like because one, you're doing something for kids. You're actually able to use your creativity and it's not driven by trying to get to the top of the ladder. I enjoyed it so much that I ended up doing a script writing course in LA just to understand the whole process of script writing. And then I came back to Hyderabad and worked with Green Gold Entertainment, Green Gold Animation, which is again an animation company. And yeah, I worked with them for a couple of years before I got married.
So you mentioned a lot of interesting things. For example, the Satyam scam. That was probably one of the first scams we heard about in India. Our generation, like my generation growing up.
Yeah.
That was, and since then, of course, you've heard of many other scams after that. Satyam scam was the first.
It was a huge story. I actually even got to speak to Ramalinga Raju's wife at that point. It was like, initially it was an off the record thing. And I actually managed to do like some exclusive stories. So in that way, it was great because I got some big opportunities. But like I said, I don't think that industry was for me because also I was working with them during 26/11, which was another huge, obviously, incident that happened in Bombay. And so for me to realize how the media has actually portrayed everything and how a lot of the hostages, like locations were given away on TV. In fact, when I was working with them, I was asked to go to the airport because one of the hostages from Hyderabad was returning back to Hyderabad from Bombay. And I was supposed to go to the airport and ask them about their experience. And I lost my mind at that point because I'm like, are you serious? What are they going to tell me? They're probably traumatized at this point. And it was really not in line with my values. I just couldn't. And I actually refused to. And then over the next 6 months, it just like more and more things. That's why I quit.
Other interesting thing that you mentioned was that screenwriting thing, and you work for this company. And you mentioned earlier, maybe now or before when we were chatting, it was Chota Bheem, right? That's the character that you...
Yeah, Chota Bheem, which was a super popular animated show back home in India. It still is. They've even done like spin-offs on Netflix, Mighty Little Bheem, which is Chota Bheem as a baby, and things like that. And I have worked on all of those shows. It was a really good experience working. But of course, for me, it was one of those things that I couldn't, unfortunately, carry on to once I moved to the US.
And so how did you, from that life of journalism, script writing, animation, how did you now get into nutrition and fitness industry?
I honestly, 10 years ago, would have not thought that I would be here. One, I would not have imagined that I would care so much about eating well and working out, strength training in particular. the number of times I have gone to the gym, quit within a week, have tried these multiple diets and juice diets and all sorts of things, the number of times I've quit, I know. So I know the struggle people have been through. And the funny thing is, I'm not an overweight person. I don't have any health issues as such. I don't know what it was. Like there's this thing back home where people don't have any issues commenting on your weight and things like that. So there was a lot of trying diets before your wedding, etc., etc. But nothing like it was never a lifestyle for me. Even though I was athletic as a kid, in my 20s, it was not a lifestyle for me. When I moved here, my husband and I, so I was 29 at that point, my husband was 30, and Colorado obviously is at an 5,000 feet above sea level. So it is at an altitude. We had an apartment on the second floor. We were so breathless climbing up the stairs. And that honestly, I would say that was my like light bulb switch where you're like, okay, you think you're healthy.
Kind of colliding with entering 30s and people start talking about 30s.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So for me, it was like, oh my God, I'm just turning 30. I can't climb up 2 flights of stairs without being out of breath and carrying some grocery bags. Something has got to change. And so my brother-in-law had been living in the US for a while and he would go to the gym pretty regularly. He dragged us one day to the gym and I was like, I'm not getting a gym membership. I know myself. I'll quit within a week. But I started going. I really felt it's so strange. I don't know what it is different from India that I did here, but I fell in love with strength training almost immediately. I loved the feeling of being able to lift heavy weights. I loved the fact that I wasn't doing random cardio on the treadmill, just mindlessly without any goal. I was lifting weights. I would constantly lift heavier and it felt good. And that's where it started. And when I started feeling stronger and feeling healthy.
Did you take training there in Minakshi for you?
No, I didn't. Like I said, my brother-in-law would lift. So he guided us, both my husband and I. He would tell us what exercises to do. So actually, I should thank him for where I am because if he hadn't taken us to the gym and if he hadn't got us into strength training, I probably would not have been here. But then I did also see, yes, I lost some weight. I got fitter. I got stronger. I built muscle. As a woman in India, you're constantly like, don't lift weights. You're going to look manly. Constant things. I like the fact that I want to actually gain muscle now. People don't realize it. That toned look that most women want comes from building muscle and lifting weights. It does not come from cardio. And so that's where it started. And then I wanted to complement that. I'm like, okay, I'm working out, but I need to eat better to complement that strength training. And so I would just randomly read articles online about nutrition and I would come across things like eating balanced meals and eating protein and macros and tracking your calories and all of those things. And I really enjoyed that process of learning. It never felt like learning to me. It never felt like studying to me. It started off as me just wanting to educate myself. But over time, I was like, okay, let me do a certification. And then I did Decision Nutrition, has a course, which is all online. You can do it in your own time. But it teaches you everything on the basics of nutrition science, what kind of things to focus on depending on what your fitness levels are, what your goals are. It was very simply explained. And so I never thought I would start coaching other people.
And so when did you start thinking there could be a career in this field?
So I will say, I don't even know what started it, but I think Instagram was pretty new at that point, like 8-9 years. It was not new, but it was like just about growing at that point. And originally I started an account that was a private account. So nobody could actually follow me. And I did it more to record my own journey for my own benefit. I was just like, okay, let me record my progress and see how things go. And over time, like people would find me. I found other women who I'm still friends with. It's through simple hashtags like Indians who live. And so you're like, okay, there are other women like me who live in the US. So I've actually made friends that way. So as much as I complain about like the Instagram algorithm, I've actually quote unquote met a lot of women online and become like really good friends. And so that's where I started. I would share my own journey. Then I decided, I was like, okay, one day I was like, okay, let me make my account public. And then I would start sharing more things. I would start sharing workouts. I would share tips and like meal ideas. And I just started growing a following that way. And then people would ask me like tips. How do you eat dal chawal? And, do you still, or have you given up rice? And that's when I started like busting those myths that you can. And that's when I realized also, okay, there's a huge thing missing. Because also, so you did ask me about whether I took training. So when I started, I didn't work with anybody, but I did work with an American online coach a couple of years later. And she would give me like workouts, but she obviously didn't understand what Indian diets look like. She didn't understand what I've grown up eating.
Right.
And I'm someone who I don't need Indian food, but my husband and I we do eat Indian food multiple times a week. So if someone doesn't know that how to help me eat those kind of meals better, I don't want to give up that rice. I don't want to give up roti, and I don't want to give up idli dosa. How can I eat it better? Nobody could help me. And that's when I realized there was a big gap. And I was like, okay, I can actually help other women who've probably been at the same place that I've been moving to the US. So originally it started off coaching women everywhere, but then I niched down to women who've moved away from home.
So how did you find that niche? Why just women abroad?
I think it happened naturally because I would share a lot of my own journey on Instagram. So I would say my initial clients in particular all came from Instagram, maybe through like common friends whose friends have followed me. And I think it just so happened that they would see things like, okay, she's a mom who's moved to the US from India. So she probably relates to what my journey is like. She probably will understand what my lifestyle is like. But I think a lot of who you are as a person is instilled in whatever kind of work you do. And that just helps bring in a certain clientele. Because if I'm a guy who's single and in my 20s, I'm not going to get the same clientele that I have right now, right? Because they don't relate to me because I'm a 20-year-old guy. Whereas I'm a mom right now in my mid 30s and I have 2 kids. So I'm going to get that kind of clientele. I think it just happens a lot more naturally.
So when you started out, you realized your following is increasing. People are reaching out, asking you questions about what to eat and stuff. You grew up eating certain kind of foods and you are halfway around the world and a lot of things have changed, but you don't want to change your food because that's your identity, right? How did you learn, first of all, on what kind of foods you can eat, how to incorporate that Indian food in this journey?
So I will say the fact that I did this certification obviously helped because I started understanding, okay, protein is important. So if I eat a certain meal, like this is what I could do to include. So simple things like, say I eat dosas for lunch. Okay, let me add a side of eggs or just to get in more protein. Or I will make sure that I add in like a small salad on the side. When you're focusing on these important nutritious factors, you can eat anything. So you're automatically going to moderate the intake of dosa you're eating. So I think it was a lot of trial and error for me personally. And so a lot of the coaching I do is obviously from my own experience, but also from my education and understanding of what good nutrition is.
So now that you decided and you figured out how to coach people based on Indian diets and people similar to you who have moved to US and stuff, what were your thoughts going into this business or coaching profession? Did you have any fear? Were you thinking of risk associated with it? Because it's US, you don't know how you work here, right? Of course, the regulations and stuff. How did you manage that? How did you overcome those things?
So I will say at the beginning, way before I got my EAD, I did do some coaching for free. Simply one, to get some experience and understanding of what a coaching experience and relationship could look like. Over time, realized there was definitely a demand for it. I realized that more and more women were getting in touch with me because they also realized that, okay, she's not forcing me to eat a meal plan. So for me, my goal always as a coach is to educate my clients. There was a point where I was coaching one client a month. And at that point, it was never, oh, let me do this full time. I couldn't work. I had a young son and it was just like a side thing that I did just to keep myself occupied. But over time, I was like, okay, there's a huge gap here. I could make this a career. This was 2022. And my husband actually was the one. I have to give him a lot of credit too, because when I got my EAD, I was like, okay, I've been coaching, but should I now go looking for a job now that I've got my EAD? And he's like, why? You're so passionate about it. You've literally spent the last 2 or 3 years like coaching women and learning more and educating yourself and getting so I did get a nutrition certification, but I also got a personal training certification. So I understand the exercise science and how to design the right workouts. I understand what corrective exercise, how to improve knee pain and lower back pain and all of those things too. So he's like, you spend all this time, why don't you just put all your eggs in one basket? You have nothing to lose. There's zero investment involved right now. You are risking, though, of course, is the amount of time you're going to spend. And so last year, I had some savings. And so I put all the money I had, it was probably the biggest risk, into 2 things. One was designing my logo and website. And 2 was doing a course on social media marketing. So those two things, and these things were not cheap. For me to spend that dollar amount on these two things, I can't even imagine. Like, it's still probably the best investment I've made.
Yes.
It is a risk, right? Anytime money is involved, it is a risk. But you have to be willing. If you feel like you want to go in a certain direction, you have to be willing to take that risk. And so for a while, in the beginning, I coached without a website, without any of this. But I knew that if I wanted to grow, I needed to have a certain brand.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided, I was like, okay, I think that was like middle of 2022. I had made some money at that point. So whatever I had made, I then put into building that a personal brand.
Now you had the opportunity to make money, which is, of course, a good thing. How did you come up with how much I can charge, what kind of programs I can create? How did you go through all of that?
Oh man, that was one hard thing because I think I didn't value myself enough at that point. You tend to have imposter syndrome. No matter what you do, you're like, I'm just one among many other people. I should charge this much just to get more clients. And obviously that happened. When you're charging low enough, you'll get clients from anywhere.
Right.
And so I actually got clients from India too, because I charged $100 or less a month, which is nothing in the
Right.
personal training nutrition world. It is nothing. But so obviously I got a lot more clients. I got clients who would pay me and then just disappear from the face of the earth because it was low enough, obviously. And then when I spent some time on, okay, how much time am I dedicating to each client per week, per day? I still stuck with that. I would say for a good 6 months, I stuck with that pricing. Then in the last year, like in the beginning of 2023 is when I increased my pricing. And that's when I felt like, okay, I'm getting enough for what I am doing. I'm valuing myself enough. And I really believed in what I could provide. So it was never a question of how good am I as a coach. I knew the systems I had in place and the program that I had put together would help women. And so I decided to increase my prices. And that, I would say, also was a big risk because I'm like, okay, I haven't established myself enough that I could charge more and still get a decent amount of clientele. Surprisingly, it worked. I think, like I said, because I really believed in what I could provide, I have really developed relationships with people that I talk to. This is why I don't have anybody working with me, is because I really take the time out to develop connections. I answer every single DM that I get, no matter how silly. I will answer as long as it's not like personalized advice of how much should I be eating without knowing your history. I don't give advice, but very generic advice. I answer all DMs. So I think that to some extent helped or developed that trust in what I could provide as a coach, and that brought in the clientele. So pricing was never an issue. And I still while I wanted to value myself, I also wanted to provide services to people because I get it, right? It's very different when people move from India to US versus people who have grown up here, right? In terms of how they value the dollar. So everybody, I know it, I know it happens. The moment you move here, you're like,
Yeah, you're
oh my God.
calculating.
Yeah, you're calculating, oh my gosh, $100, I can't pay this. I can't afford this, right? So I wanted to make it affordable while not being hard on myself and definitely valuing myself. So now
Yeah.
I think with the current pricing, I do get more people who truly want to make that effort and spend the time to transform themselves and improve their health.
You're doing a lot of things in the last year in a steep learning curve for you, but you also have two kids, right? And they're very young, and this is US, right? I don't know how much help you have from family and stuff, but how do you manage all of this? How do you manage your time?
This is a question I actually get from a lot of people. I think I never used to be this way. I think you end up taking things for granted, especially when you live back home with family and all of that. You like always think, okay, someone else is going to do things for you, but you get a reality check when you move to the US. And I would say after I became a parent, I also became a lot more organized. I don't know what your audience is like, but when I had my son, who's going to be 5 in a couple of months, one of the biggest things I struggled with is my mental health. I really struggled with postpartum mental health, and I didn't know when I was sleeping. And I think with your first kid in general, you're just like, you get hit by a bus because
Right.
it's like everything you don't expect and you don't understand and you don't know what to do. You feel like everything you're doing is wrong. And so I spent a lot of time on being a parent, but never spending any time on myself. And I think that was the biggest wake up call for me. Again, in terms of my own personal fitness journey, but also in terms of how I had to operate on a daily basis. And that's why how I started getting a little more organized. I literally plan out every single day at this point. I meal prep over the weekends. We try to order out very minimally, maybe once a week at the most, unless we're going out or something. But I plan my days, then I plan my kids' activities. And now I've actually also had to start a family calendar. So I think planning ahead is key, and that planning ahead is key in anything.
Let's talk about your business. Mostly your clientele is immigrant women, those that connect with you, your journey, etc. Can you share a bit about what kind of clients do you get? Are they working women, students, etc.?
So I will say it's a mix of clientele. Yes, it is mostly immigrant women. I have some clients in India, but 90% of them are either based in the US, Europe, or Australia. I would say very few of them are in their like early 20s or even teenagers. A majority of them are anywhere between 25 to 45 years old. So that's my larger clientele. Again, I think, like I said, because I'm 37. So I think it has to do with just the age that I am at. I would say a majority of them are working. A majority of them are moms. Also, I'm a pre and postnatal certified coach. So I do get some clients who are in that pre-pregnancy, trying to conceive stage. I have some clients who are newly postpartum, initial 1 month to 3 month period. So I would say it's like a really varied variety.
You mentioned rather interesting thing that is pre and postnatal. You have pre and postnatal programs. That is another specialization. How did you have to pick that?
I think a lot of what I've been doing is influenced by my own journey, because I was like, okay, when I had my son, I didn't even know this was a thing. Like I said, I was obviously working out way before that. But when I went back to working out after having my son, I didn't realize how then I would get like pelvic floor issues, or my core was super weak. And then I did some research and found out that pelvic floor rehab, because obviously you've delivered babies, your pelvic floor and core is super, super weak. And I didn't know that was an entire separate specialization. And it's sad that women are not educated about stuff like this. Like, even when you go for your 6-week checkup, you're not told that, okay, you need to go to a physical therapist and make sure your pelvic floor, because women are so worried about losing weight. These important foundational things are not focused on. And again, it started with my own education for myself. And then I was like, okay, I might as well, give this information out to more women, because I do get a lot of women in these stages of life.
Where do you get your typical clients from?
Large chunk of clients do come from social media, but I think increasingly with the amount of clients I've coached in the last year itself, I've got a lot more client reference. So I would say like maybe 80 to 85% of my clients are from social media, and about 20 is from other existing client reference.
And what do most clients come to you for? What is their goal?
So I will say, yes, a lot of women do come to me to lose weight, but I also, as a coach, feel very responsible to help them understand that good health goes beyond just your weight. You can be extremely healthy. I will say personally, before I had my son, I was X amount of weight. I'm 15 to 20 pounds heavier now. But at that point, I don't think I could have run a half marathon. I've run 2 half marathons so far. I don't think I could have done that despite being 20 pounds lighter, simply because I was not eating the best. So good health goes beyond so much more than just weight. And I feel like as a coach, I do spend a lot of my time trying to change that mindset with a lot of women. Yes, you can lose weight, but it doesn't have to be at the cost of your health. You should be focusing on things like making sure your blood sugar levels are good, your cholesterol levels are good. The moment you focus on that, the weight does happen as a side effect, but that shouldn't be your primary focus.
Yeah, and I definitely, one word of appreciation. You don't do those marketing gimmicks before, after, and I actually saw a lot of that in your content, right? You have a very honest take where you yourself mention that, if someone praises you, tell them it's the camera angle. With Instagram, people post good pictures. So you're pretty honest about things like that.
Yes, I think, and I actually really pride myself. I'm someone who doesn't take compliments, but I really pride myself on the fact that I'm what on Instagram with me, and what I say is 100% what you get. I eat what my clients eat. I eat the same way. I don't eat any different. I still eat Indian food. My clients eat Indian food. I don't work out 6 days a week. I work out 3 days a week, just like anybody else would.
And so, what kind of programs do you offer, Minakshi, if you can elaborate?
So there's a couple. My main program is my one-on-one coaching, which is very high touch point, weekly check-ins, very customized nutrition and training programs based on what your schedule looks like, what your lifestyle, and what do you have access to a gym, or do you want to work out at home. The one-on-one coaching will be adjusted based on your goals. That is some of them who want to build muscle. Their goal is not weight loss. Some of them simply want to just improve their A1C levels, or they want to just get healthier or sleep better. So I really like working with women who also don't have just fat loss as a goal. So under that umbrella of one-on-one coaching, it really doesn't matter what your goal is. But the pre and postnatal is obviously tailored really to where you are in your pregnancy. Some of them are going through IVF and fertility treatment. So then your nutrition and training is also customized to all of that. I just introduced a group coaching program last year, and I've only done one cohort so far. And that group coaching stems from me realizing that a lot of women lack the basic foundational knowledge when it comes to what does balanced meal look like, what does good sleep look like, how do you stay consistent in your fitness journey. And so that group coaching program is a more educational, foundational based style coaching, community style accountability and things like that. And that runs for 8 weeks. I'm actually doing another batch later this month, but those are the main things I offer currently.
Okay. And for pre and postnatal programs, do you tie up with doctors? Is that like a source of customers for you where doctors recommend you?
I haven't tapped into that yet, but it is something that is on my radar, is to tie up, because what happens with doctors are, I'll also give you like a legality when it comes to fitness coaches versus dietitians. So in the US, unlike India, where anybody who does any sort of nutrition certification can call themselves a nutritionist or dietitian, in the US, unless you've gone to college and done like a degree in nutrition, you can't call yourself a dietitian. Also, because with dietitians, they are allowed to provide nutrition for medical therapy. So say someone has cancer, only dietitians are allowed to provide nutrition. I legally cannot. So a lot of doctors do tend to tie up with dietitians versus just a nutrition coach. Not everybody has access to a dietitian because sometimes it's like insurance issues and things like that. Dietitians tend to be a lot more expensive as well.
Right.
And nutrition coaches are just more accessible, I feel like.
Got it. So just changing tracks a little bit. How do you keep track of your content? Because I have seen your Instagram and probably there are other social media sites that you use and you post a lot of stuff. And it's, of course, as part of it is sharing your learnings, but also to promote yourself. How do you keep track of your content you have covered, what you need to post about? How do you generate ideas and all that?
What has really worked for me so far is, one, like you said, being honest about what I do and my learnings. But I think to some extent, I try to understand, like I said, because I do have a lot of conversations on DMs, I get a pulse of what the biggest struggles are. So a lot of my content is generated around that. I'll get a lot of questions about, okay, I struggle to be consistent in my fitness journey. So then I'm like, okay, this is the thing you're struggling with the most. So then I try to share most content about consistency when it comes to fitness journey. Or then I get a lot of people saying, okay, I'm vegetarian or vegan. How do I eat more protein? So then I'll do a post about. So I try to get a pulse of what people are talking about and center my content around that.
Do you have to make sure you post content every day? Do you follow any kind of
So there was a point I would do it every day, but just like my own fitness journey, or like I tell clients, if you feel like you can't keep up with something, reduce your expectations of yourself. So now I try to do it 3 times a week. Weekly, I'll always have a meal prep post, because a lot of people have come to me via my meal prep posts. And meal prep is a huge thing that I provide as part of my coaching too, is understanding how you can do desi meal prep, because all the meal prep posts you see on social media are generally, okay, chicken and rice and broccoli, but how do you meal prep? Even dal, rice and those kind of things.
You know, that's a good philosophy that you borrowed from your profession to social media. Try to do what you can and being consistent. Yeah, instead of forcing yourself to do it every day, and that doesn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to post just for the sake of posting. So I try to organize it in the sense that, okay, let me do one mindset post a week, one nutrition related post, and one training related post. So that's how my broader topics are. And it just varies on a week. Obviously, during the holiday season, people struggle. So then it also depends a lot on what the season of the year is and where people are, Diwali time, all those things. So then my posts tend to get centered around what's happening generally in the world.
Got it. So do you get like a pulse? So you start working with a client, let's say. Do you get like a pulse within a week or after a couple of calls? In this client is not going to achieve their goal, or are they going to achieve their goal? If how do you change tactics working with of how you work with them?
I can definitely get a pulse of what their goal is and how they are as a person, because I do ask very like deep questions when it comes to signing on clients. Is I will ask someone what their lifestyle is like, things like when do you go to bed and how old is your kid? Because all of these things, people don't realize it. It's not just as simple as, okay, what do you eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner? When do you sleep? How old are your kids? What is your work life? All of those things will influence. So I do understand. And a lot of times I'll be very honest with them. So if someone's telling me, okay, I have 3 months and I want to lose X amount of pounds, I will usually be very honest with them and tell them it's not going to happen. Just you have to be realistic. If you are able to do it, you would have done it already. Because if you, in 3 months, if you have this certain goal, given your lifestyle, it's not going to be realistic without you giving up a lot of stuff. Is it worth it to you? So you have to really weigh the pros and cons of, okay, I want to lose 20 pounds in 3 months. That would mean no going out. That would mean being very disciplined with your food. Is it really worth it to you? Or are you willing to give yourself 6 months where you learn more sustainable habits? But I will also say that I have had the luxury. I don't want to say luxury because it's sad, but I have had to let go of clients in the last year simply from them not being honest on our initial call with what their goals are. And then me realizing over the next couple of weeks that, okay, this person is expecting too much from me. I don't want to starve women to the point of losing the weight just for the sake of it, while compromising things like hormones and whether your menstrual cycle is on time and things like that.
And so what is competition like in your space? I know you found a good niche, South Asian women immigrated outside India. And again, that pre and postnatal stage.
I would say it's still relatively untapped space, especially for the Indian community living abroad. Yes, there's tons and tons of coaches back home in India. I know that. I've seen that. There are big companies back home. I will say for like coaches like me who've moved abroad or who live here and coach specifically Indians, I think it's relatively untapped, which is sad. I don't want to think of it as competition because I feel like the more people in this space, the better it is, because you don't want Indians to go to an American coach or someone who doesn't understand our lifestyle and culture and waste money with someone like that. The fact that there are not enough people in this space, I think is a sad thing, because it just means there are less Indians prioritizing their health.
And so how do you keep up with new trends and innovation in your industry in both fitness and nutrition?
I try to read as much as I can. I think the biggest thing with social media is really filtering out the sensationalization of stuff and what is actual scientific evidence. So I try to read a lot of research articles. So even if, say, something like a newspaper article comes out about, okay, Diet Coke is carcinogenic or artificial sweeteners are carcinogenic, I will do my research. Not everything just because someone says it's not true. Because when you say an artificial sweetener is carcinogenic, you're telling people that when they drink a zillion cans of Coke, that's when it's going to be carcinogenic. Nobody drinks a million cans of Coke. It's like you have to drink an insane amount for it to actually have any effect on you. I think that's the biggest thing that I see now is these scare tactics people use. Oh my God, if you eat this, you're going to die. And it sucks because everybody doesn't have access to all. Some people do have to eat frozen food because it's a cheaper option. Not everybody has access to organic food.
And this happens quite a bit, right? Especially with food, right? Where every other day something new comes up where you're like, oh, you've been doing this. That is completely wrong. And then you have
Right. Yes, exactly. And I think That's what I try to preach a lot is find moderation with everything. And I always say 80-20 rule is great because that's what is sustainable. Like 80% of the time, try to eat whole foods, minimally processed foods, more fruits and vegetables, and all the things that we've been told growing up is eat fruits and vegetables, chew your food. All of those things is what you should be doing. While occasionally enjoying a friend's birthday or your kid's birthday or your birthday or the holiday season, there's no need to stress out about Diwali that happens once a year. What
Right.
matters a lot more is what you're doing the rest of the year.
We have a natural segue to the section I wanted to cover. And one of the things that you mentioned in your content is, and this is also quite popular, which is eat when up to 80% full. What is that about?
Right.
How do you measure when you're 80% full?
This is something that I wish people talk more about because yes, I'm also one of those people that talks a lot about protein and vegetables and things like that. But for someone who's very beginner level, who doesn't understand what protein is, first getting them to trust what their body is telling them is super important. Because I think in the lifestyle we all lead these days, everyone is eating distracted. They're scrolling their phone and eating, they're watching TV and eating, and we're all very distracted, which is why, you will hear people also say, you know, when you force your kids to eat while watching TV and things like that, kids don't understand how much they're eating, which is why they're eating. Whereas when they eat undistracted, they actually say that kids understand their hunger a lot better than adults do, which is why they take much longer to eat and they stop when they're full. Kids have better control of their appetite, and actually adults should be doing a lot more of that. That's really eating slowly, taking 30 minutes to eat your meal, because then you give your body that time. You're giving your stomach and mind the time to connect with each other and say, okay, I'm actually full. And this is something I tell all my clients is, one way to know whether what that 80% full is, you want to be like, okay, at this point, my hunger is satiated. I do have space for more food, but my hunger is satiated and I don't need to eat anymore. That's what 80% full is. I was hungry, I ate my meal and I'm satisfied now. That's the point you want to get to. And that's a very healthy way to understand what your body is telling you. And so it does take some trial and error. And obviously, everyone's level of 80% is very different, but it's just a matter of understanding your body more. And I think despite all this, oh, you need to count calories and macros and all of these things, understanding your body's hunger and trusting your hunger cues is probably the biggest life skill that will help you. Because then you don't have to stress out about, oh my God, I'm going to eat at a restaurant. What do? I tend to overeat. Because when you eat 80% full at a restaurant, you can still enjoy all the foods that you like without going overboard.
Yeah. And I think this is I know this thing in Hindi, which they say, "Pet bhar gaya, but man nahi bhara," which is like,
Right.
the green is still there.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
touched a little bit on protein. Why is protein in the limelight now? Why so much focus on protein? Because it wasn't there at least a few years ago.
I don't think it's a trend essentially, unlike like things like keto and stuff like that. I think the thing with protein was, in the past, it was the pure lack of knowledge. Even personally, like I didn't know what protein was. I didn't know why I needed to have protein, but you educate yourself a little more and you understand that the Indian diet is very devoid of protein unless you're a meat eater. And a lot of the issues that stem for Indians are just more prone to lifestyle diseases like heart disease and diabetes and higher cholesterol and things like that, simply because of a very imbalanced diet. I want to highlight Indians in particular is understanding why protein is important is one, from a perspective of weight loss, it keeps you full longer just because your body takes much longer to digest. Like, for example, you eat a cup of rice, you can eat second cup of rice, third cup of rice and still be hungry. Whereas you eat a serving of protein, you will be full for longer, which means you're less likely to snack and be hungry or overeat the rice. You never have to cut out rice, roti, etc. But if you eat a more balanced meal, you're less likely to depend on the carbs and things like that to keep you full longer. So from a fat loss perspective, that's how it's helpful.
Correct. Is it taking more time to digest? Is that what is happening? What's the carbs, which is just
Yes.
digesting?
Yeah. which is why so people with diabetes and people with PCOS, your blood sugar spikes really quickly because carbs, especially things like white rice, white pasta, and things like that, are digested so fast, your blood sugar spikes really fast. So by adding protein to your meal and fiber, which comes from fruits and vegetables, and you're eating a more well-balanced meals, which means your blood sugar levels are better, which means you have less fat, you're less likely to gain weight, you're less likely to feel hungry quicker, you're less likely to snack. So it really plays into all of the other aspects, which is why eating a well-balanced meal, yes, protein is an important part, but it's not the only important part in your meal. I think it's talked about more now because most people struggle with protein more than anything else. It's easy to plan your rice, roti, dosa, etc.
Right.
But to actually plan out, oh, I need to include eggs or chicken and things like that in my meals, people don't think about that as
Right.
much.
And so, what about vegetarians? So, I am a vegetarian, and I
Right.
don't know, there is a future thought that I would probably turn vegan. But what
Right.
are good sources of protein for vegetarians and vegans? Because everything I see for vegans, at least, is soy, right? Everything is soy. And then I
Correct.
just wonder if is it good to just depend on soy and
So with vegans, honestly, it is a lot harder, but that's not to say it's impossible. It just takes a little bit of planning and being a little more creative with your meals. You do have to depend a lot more on lentils and legumes to get some protein. They are not major sources of protein, but obviously if you have enough decent sources. So for example, if you're a vegan and you want to have a balanced meal, aside from soy, of course, there's tofu, etc. But like if you want to do like a legume heavy meal, you're not including any rice that way. You're getting all your carbs too from the rajma and chole. So having, say, like a mixed bean chaat or something like that would make a good high protein vegan meal as opposed to rajma and rice. So like adding in vegetables and chickpeas and black eyed peas and making like a big bowl of chaat, that way you're getting a decent amount of protein for a vegan. And you can mix it up a little bit with tofu and other soy, edamame and other soy products. I would say for vegans, I usually do recommend including a vegan supplement, protein supplement, just because it's an easy way to get one of your servings of protein from a supplement. Even for vegetarians, it's the same thing. Of course, vegetarians do have that option of things like Greek yogurt and cottage cheese and all of those things as well.
So what is the difference between Greek yogurt and Indian yogurt? Because coming from Hyderabad, like we have grown up eating a lot of yogurt, dahi, right?
Right.
And now, but people say Greek yogurt is better. Why is that? What is the difference?
So yeah, honestly, dahi is like a staple, I think, in most Indian households. I don't think just South India, more so in South India for sure. Even especially if I have a desi meal, it has to end with yogurt. The thing with Greek yogurt is one, it's higher protein because it's essentially hung curd. So you can actually make Greek yogurt at home. If you're using dahi, you just basically, it's hung curd and you're basically removing all the liquid. And so the leftover is much higher in protein, much lower in fat and carbs. Greek yogurt is just a great way to add to, especially in desi meals. It's an easy way. When I make curry, I just replace regular yogurt with Greek yogurt, and so it's a higher protein curry. Simple things like that.
And so this is something that we Indians face, especially, right? Like growing up, I don't know how much you have seen this or heard about this, but in my house, we were discouraged to eat anything that was cooked in the morning, in the evening, right? There was a lot of focus on eating fresh, right? And you shouldn't eat meat next day. Then I came to US and we saw the culture that people store their meals for a week. So until when can you eat meals stored properly with whatever proper guidelines? And beyond what point should you avoid?
So this is honestly an often asked question to me too, because I meal prep a lot of my food. Is one, I think people don't realize the privilege you have back home is you have house help to cook food for you and your meals are cooked fresh for you. Living the life you live here, it's just a more convenient option. I would rather prep my meals and make sure I'm eating enough protein and vegetables than not prep my meals and end up ordering food from out. That's what you should do. If you enjoy and want to make sure your meals are fresh, that's a great option too. From a nutritional perspective, It depends on, obviously, from each, depending on the kind of food, like carbs will last longer and you can freeze food for longer. But from a nutrition perspective, meal prep food loses very little nutrition. That nutrition that you lose, it's so minute, you'd rather just meal prep your food. Yes, obviously, all of us would love to eat fresh food if it's cooked hot for us. But if we all have, especially here, we have these lives which are so fast paced and zero help. It's just a matter of convenience.
So one question of stress eating and emotional eating, or you're just eating when you're bored, and that happens quite
Right.
frequently too. Any tips on how to manage those things?
Yeah. And I will tell you that this is the thing I've noticed is the most common struggle. It's not as simple as, okay, just tell me what to eat and I'll lose weight or get healthier. From an emotional eating and stress eating perspective, I would say two big tips that I have is having a pause mentality, because a lot of that stress eating happens mindlessly, right? A lot of it is habit. Just like we've built habits with brushing your teeth or washing your face before going to bed, we've also built that habit of, oh, when work is stressing me out, I'm going to go to my pantry and reach for food. But when you have a pause mentality of, okay, let me pause for 5 minutes, and after 5 minutes, let me go do something else as outside of the pantry. And in 5 minutes, I will make less of a impulsive decision. Sometimes you may still go back to the food, and that's fine. It's something that requires practice. It's not going to happen overnight, but at least just pausing makes it less of an impulsive and a more of an intentional choice. So the pause mentality is one. And two, something that I like to call a nourishment menu is like, okay, in that moment, that cookie is giving you happiness or at least distracting you from the problem at hand. But write down like 4 or 5 things that actually bring you equal amount of happiness. So for me, something like a walk really helps. So I will always tell myself, okay, let me go take a walk in 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and I'll see more often than not, that makes me feel better and I'm less likely to, randomly eat snacks. But for everybody, it's different. For some people, it's, journaling. I have some clients who journal because something is stressing them out. I like to also watch a reality television during these times or listen to a podcast or something. So sometimes just finding other things to replace this habit with will help. So having something like maybe even just writing down something on your fridge or your pantry and say, okay, you're stressed. These are the 3 things that you can do. And so when the moment you see something visually, you're less likely to reach for the snack and go do that thing inside. And it should always be intentional. It doesn't mean that this food is bad, but the fact that you're doing it mindlessly, that's the problem. And that's the thing you need to deal with. And I always say every choice you make with food should ideally be intentional. So you want to eat that cake, make sure you're present in that moment and you're there, your 100% attention is there on that cake. You're more likely to enjoy the cake. You're more likely to not overeat. You're more likely to not feel as much guilt eating that cake when you're present in that moment and decide that, okay, today is the day I want to eat the slice of cake and it's fine. Today I just want it and I'm going to move on.
It's a lot of mind over body kind of thing, right?
A mind is, that's what I tell everybody is, anybody who has some knowledge of nutrition can tell you need to eat more protein or eat more vegetables. But that mindset aspect of it, very few people can focus on. It's not as simple as, oh, you need to have more willpower or you need to be more disciplined. It's a lot. It's a lot of ingrained stuff. It's a lot of generational stuff that you've grown up with. Even as Indians, we've grown up being told, finish everything on your plate. So now we have no concept of whether we're full. That's where, again, the 80% full comes in, is understanding that, okay, I don't have to finish everything on my plate because I'm full. Then over time, you'll start serving yourself smaller portions because you understand that, okay, with this amount of food, I'm full. I'm also not going to waste food. It may take some time. And again, a lot of parents do this too, is they eat off their kid's plate because the kid hasn't finished their food. Let me finish it. You're not a garbage can. I tell all my mom clients this, you're not a garbage can. Give yourself the dignity of a good meal. Even if you want your kids mac and cheese or whatever it is, serve yourself a small portion. You deserve the dignity of a good meal and not just eat leftovers.
Yeah, I'm guilty too. I do that too. Just
so that's what I say. Even with for your kids, just serve smaller portions, so they're less likely to waste. You're less likely to feel guilty. But it's a lot of mental conditioning that has to change. That you don't have to finish, or just put your food away. You can just put it in the fridge, and for your next meal, just add it as a side. Sometimes I'll have it as a snack. Suppose I have some sabzi left over, I'll just add it as a topping to some snack or something like that, or just have it in your next meal. It's not going to waste. You're just like listening to your hunger instead, and you're trusting it a little more.
How is nutrition for kids different than adults?
I would say, I think the best thing we can do as adults for our kids and to change how we've grown up is to not say this food is good, this food is bad. And like, I will still have some sugary things with my, in my house. Kids do like it. It's fine. You don't have to cut it out immediately because the natural psychology is tell somebody that you shouldn't have something, they want more of it, right?
Okay.
And that applies to adults as well. So instead, with kids, to help educate them more. Like my son will understand that, okay, protein gives you energy, protein makes you strong. So talk using that kind of right language, I think really helps with kids. But in terms of nutrition itself, it's not my like 100% area of expertise. But I will say one of the best things we can do is instill eating more balanced meals with kids. It doesn't have to be super hyper focused. Kids don't need as much protein as we do. What they get via milk and cheese and curd is more than enough for them. Modeling what you want your kids to do. You can't expect your kids to eat well if you eat like crap.
Right. Share some myths about fitness and nutrition.
I would say the biggest myths are you need to cut out carbs or fats to lose weight. I think that's the one thing that really irritates me is like when people come to me and say, okay, I want to do keto. Keto essentially is cutting out all carbs in your diet. And I think that's the biggest myth because it's not a certain food that makes you gain weight. It's not a certain food that will make you lose weight. So there are no weight loss foods or there are no weight gain foods. It's your overall calorie intake in your day, your activity levels, etc., which matter more than a specific food. So you can eat carbs. Why we gain weight is because we eat so much rice without eating the more nutritious stuff like protein and vegetables. You can't eat 500 grams of broccoli or vegetables for one sitting, but it's easy to eat 500 grams of rice. Yeah. So that's one of the biggest myths, I think. And I think, what else would I say? And then detoxes. And sadly, even I've fallen for this when I was younger, is detox diets or detox juices and things like that. You don't need detox. If you have a functioning liver, your body detoxes everything. So after a holiday weekend, you don't need to detox. You just need to go back to regular routine and eat well-balanced, nutritious meals.
Or that's actually a good one. It's probably a marketing thing that has.
Yeah, 100%. It's 100% marketing thing because people think, okay, now I've eaten too many sweets on Diwali. So now next week, let me do a detox. You think you're losing weight, you're just losing water weight because you're not eating enough food.
Sure.
And then you're just going to go back to square one. You'd rather get back to a routine where you're eating well-balanced meals. And that's why I tell people it's the basic stuff, but it's boring, but it doesn't sell from a marketing perspective is the boring stuff. People want the sensational quick fixes.
So recently we've also heard a lot about gut health. Can you talk a little bit about that? What is gut health? How to maintain it? What are some Indian foods?
So gut health essentially is how good or bad your digestive system works. And in recent past, there has been more and more research on how gut health is connected to your mental health and cognitive health as well, and how your body absorbs nutrients. So if you have bad gut health, your body does not absorb nutrients from the food you consume as well as if you had better gut health. And a lot of times now, people have bad gut health because they have bad eating habits. It's as simple as that. They eat a lot more processed foods. They eat highly fried foods or high sugar foods. They don't eat enough fiber. They don't drink enough water. So I would say my top tips for improving gut health is move your body more. Exercise helps a lot. Exercise is not just about burning calories. Exercise helps so many other aspects of your life, including gut health. Try to drink more water and then eating more probiotic fermented foods, which brings me to what kind of Indian foods are fermented. Anything that's fermented, right? Fermented rice-based foods like dosa, idli, all of that is fermented. Dhokla and things are really good options, which is why, scaring people and saying Indian food is carb heavy. Yes, it is carb heavy, but there are so many other benefits as well. It's just a matter of balancing your meals better and making sure you have a good amount of all food groups. So fermented foods in general are highly recommended. Yogurt is another option. So yes, regular dahi is not higher protein, but then it has better gut health. So from an Indian food perspective, anything that's fermented is a good option. But also in the US, they do have things like miso soup, kimchi, and things like that. Those are very helpful for gut health as well.
And what is your take on organic foods, what kind of, let me ask you this way, what kind of organic foods do you buy versus what kind of foods you buy just regular?
So I'm not super particular personally about organic foods for the simple reason that, yes, it's how the food is processed and produced does make a difference, because obviously organic food mean lesser pesticides, lesser artificial color. But having said that, like something I mentioned earlier was accessibility to food is also important. Organic food is a lot more expensive. Not everybody wants to spend $5 on organic tomatoes, right? It depends. So if there are things that I know we consume a lot at home, and for my kids, especially in particular, I will try to get organic fruit. But at the same time, I won't spend $5 extra on something small that we don't consume. And it's mostly the fruits and vegetables, I would say. I try to choose organic, but otherwise, I'm not super particular about it.
All right, got it. And so, what kind of healthy snacks do you recommend? Let me ask you this. So what are some healthy snacks in your kitchen and where did you get them from?
The kind of snack, like I have fresh meals and meal prep meals, but with snacks, just because of the time of day where everyone is going crazy, kids are getting cranky, we are tired after work. I rather have convenient options. So I will always have Greek yogurt in my fridge, slightly lower sugar flavored Greek yogurt, but flavored Greek yogurt too is always in my fridge, just because they're simple, easy to grab options instead of sitting and prepping something at 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. Cottage cheese, another. And cottage cheese is not paneer, but like the American cottage cheese. Not everybody has a taste for it because just because it has a weird texture. But again, it's a very high protein option, and I like to blend it with some kind of seasoning to make a dip, or with salsa or something to make a dip out of it, and eat with veggies or even a handful of chips. So those are two things that will always be in my fridge. I do have pre-made protein shakes from like Core Power and Fairlife, and those are a couple of brands that I always have, again, because they're easy to take. Even if I have to take my son to swimming class or something, I just grab a bottle with me. Fruit is always, I always have like tons of fruit. Both my kids love fruit, we love fruit. I always try to wash my produce on the weekend and store them properly, so it's easy, again, easy to grab.
Okay. So have you heard about this? I think she's quite famous, which is Rujuta Divekar.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about her approach to diet and nutrition?
I actually like her approach. Some things I don't agree with, but one of the things that I really like about the fact is she says you need to eat local foods, which is true. Yes, eating local vegetables and fruits is a lot better for you simply because it means it's traveled less, it's fresher, those kind of things. Another thing that she preaches is eating foods you've grown up with is also important. Like, we are not, like, Indians cannot digest, say, meat as much. Americans do eat a lot more red meat and things. Like Western world does eat a lot more red meat. Even if you're a meat eater, Indian meat eater, you're not going to be, your body just doesn't agree as much. So I think also genetics plays a role. So I think she talks about that as well, which I definitely do agree with. I think one of the things she talks about is we don't need as much protein. And I think that's something I don't agree with. I really think protein is something the Indian population is really lacking, and it could really solve a lot of problems because, like I said, it's not just a weight loss thing, but older population, both men and women, do tend to have bone issues, bad bone health as they grow older, and as a result, they have osteoporosis. And a lot of it comes from the lack of protein in the Indian diet, lack of strength training. I think that's one of the things with her. I don't agree, but I think her overall philosophy is you don't have to give up your favorite foods. You try to eat local, which is what I agree with as well.
Just curious, would you know what kind of diets or what kind of nutrition would Bollywood celebrities follow? Because they have, of course, their fit and all of that.
Right. So I wish they were more honest about the things they do because, okay, we are in our 30s and 40s and we are a little more knowledgeable about the world, but there are young teenage girls and young boys who are looking up to these celebrities and thinking that, okay, I can eat this a certain thing and I want to look like this actor, or I want to have abs like this actor, without realizing, one, like you said, they have their own personal chefs and they train multiple hours a day. They may have their occasional indulgences, but I have seen in interviews where, like, I think Ranveer Singh had spoken about Rocky or Rani Ki Prem Kahani, where he was talking about how before his introduction shot where they show every part of his muscle and abs, he had to do a lot of sodium depletion because that's what competitive athletes on stage do, right? Like the bodybuilders, they manipulate their sodium levels and water levels so that their bodies look more ripped. So that
wow.
nobody's walking around with six pack like 24/7. Then Vicky Kaushal was talking about how his wife Katrina Kaif was, every time she has like an item number, she eats like only sweet potatoes and chicken or something like that. So it's like you have to be willing to give up like life entirely. But on the other hand, losing certain amount of weight and just getting overall healthier should be your actual goal.
So, what are the differences as men and women age in terms of nutrition and fitness? What should they focus on?
Yes, men, their bodies work differently. They obviously have more testosterone, so they build muscle much more easily. Women, as they get older, obviously they have to deal with menopause and perimenopause. With men, they don't have as many issues when it comes to hormonal health. But from a bone health perspective, men have just to do the same thing. So from a nutrition perspective, they still have to eat more balanced meals. They probably need different portion sizes when it comes to their food as compared to women. Men also definitely need more protein than women do. But from an overall health perspective, the basic rules are pretty much the same for men and women. Eat more protein, eat your vegetables, eat balanced meals, strength train. But women do have to worry about hormonal health a lot more than. And women are also a little more prone to things like osteoporosis and arthritis and things like that.
Strength training is another interesting thing that you brought up. So, what are the benefits of strength training for women?
Multiple things. One, like I said, as women get older, their bone health tends to deteriorate, muscle mass tends to deteriorate, and so they do want to strength train for that. It helps to improve hormonal health a lot more because a lot of these like hormonal issues are exacerbated by higher stress on your body, and strength training actually helps to reduce the stress you put on your body. So those are a couple of advantages. And then just honestly, overall health, because a lot of people think that you need to do a ton of cardio to get fitter and things like that. Whereas by building muscle, you improve your metabolism as well, simply because building muscle requires more amount of calories to maintain that muscle. And with strength training, you're burning calories even while at rest. Whereas with cardio, it may seem like cardio is burning more calories. You sweat a lot more with cardio. But with strength training, you're getting the benefits way after your workout is over as well.
And so, you also recently mentioned that you started running half marathons. So, how did that
Right.
happen? Is that shifting focus away for you from strength training to cardio? Because I would assume running is 100% cardio, right?
And honestly, I ran my first race after I had my daughter. I was like nine-ish months postpartum. But honestly, I did it as a challenge to myself. It was one of those things I was like, okay, second time postpartum, I don't want to focus on a weight loss goal. I just want to do something that challenges my body. And obviously, childbirth itself is like a big deal, but I want to tell myself my body is capable of doing long distance race as well. So that's one of the reasons I signed up for the race, but I actually really enjoyed the process of training for it. I like the fact that I had a lot of me time. I think for me with two kids, it really gave me some peace of mind, just being by myself, no noise, just into music or a podcast or something and running. And Colorado is obviously really pretty. And so there's great views. So that's how it started. I enjoyed the race so much that as soon as that race got over, the same week, I signed up for my second race and I ran that last year. And now I have a third race coming up in February of this year. So it's not going to take, honestly, strength training is still my first focus. It'll always be, I love getting stronger, doing heavier lifts and things like that. But this is honestly just one of those side things that I like to challenge myself occasionally. But it's not something I see myself doing in the long run. I don't know if I do very many races in the future.
One question, and maybe this is very relatable to your clientele. What are your tips for dealing with nutrition and fitness during PMS? What is a good approach? Because it's crucial, right? You don't throw away what you built so many days, and there are all kinds of hormones.
Right.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah. And Yeah. And honestly, a majority of my clients deal with this. And I think one, it's important to understand how your body functions. And I think a huge part of women's like cycles and things is understanding certain parts, like a week before your period, you are more likely to be hungry. You are going to have more cravings. So instead of going berserk or restricting yourself, just increase your calories a bit more because you are hungry. Which is why having a set amount of calories or set amount of things doesn't always work, because your body is going to fluctuate and your appetite is going to fluctuate depending on where you are in your cycle. And so I tell my clients, you ideally want to eat a bit more during that time. And that prevents any extra overeating or snacking or eating through the day and then being grumpy because you're hungry. Your appetite will regulate the following. With respect to training, I would say it depends. Different women obviously are different. Their bodies react differently. Some women literally need to rest for a couple of days. Some women are like, I can go for a walk or something. So I think from that perspective, I just say, listen to your body. And if your body is telling you take a break, 1 or 2 days is really not going to make a difference.
So some, learnings that I want to ask you about your journey and your business. What are some things you learned along the way, coaching your clients, building this profession, getting certified, all of those things?
I would say probably my biggest learning is that the back end stuff is a lot harder to do. And like I said, because I don't have a business background and such, all that back end stuff and the boring admin stuff
Right.
is a lot harder than, because you're obviously good at and passionate about the actual work you do, whether it's coaching or anything else. So that part comes a lot easier to do and you actually enjoy doing it. But it's all this other stuff that you realize that, oh my God, this is as important as the front end stuff. That's one of my biggest thing. And then the second thing I would say is you're going to meet a lot of different kind of people. And I think you need to be ready for all the ups and downs that come with running a business. And I think that's something that I've had to learn over time, is not take everything personally. If a client is unhappy, and that obviously happens because someone's not happy with your approach or they don't believe in what you're doing.
So I'm sure you have built a good following, and a lot of people, like you said, reach out to you with questions and stuff around fitness, nutrition. But do people reach out to you with questions around starting their own venture?
Recently, yes, surprisingly, I have got that, and I was like, oh, maybe I should start like a side thing, side business of how to start your own business as a immigrant or something. Because I don't know if uh, it's what I share on Instagram or whatever, but I have got people asking me about how to build a social media following, and I don't have a ton. Like I've seen other businesses again, like competitors and stuff, who have like way more followers. But I think maybe again, it's a relatability factor, knowing that, okay, she's a mom who has starting to build her business. So maybe she'll be able to help out. So I'm actually really happy to help out. I did have a friend I made on Instagram. She's much older. I think she's closer to her 50s. And she's actually starting a nutrition and coaching business. And she was like, do you mind sharing with me how you came up with your pricing and things like that? And I was more than happy to, because I feel like there should be more people in this space. And if she's helping older women, even better, because then more women in their 50s are likely to approach her because she's in that stage of life with teenage daughters. So I have had people reach out to me, ask me about how do you set up your website and your logo and things like that. And I honestly don't mind sharing, because at the end of the day, if you're a business owner and you have a certain level of trust with people, they'll still come to you because they like you for what you do.
Yeah. What's one common tip that you share across the different people that reach out?
For me, I think I tell most people is you have to be your true self. And that's something I mentioned to you as well, is something that really has helped me in my business, is being authentically who I am on social media. As a coach, I'm not the kind of coach who yell at you because you ate cake or pizza or whatever. So, and I preach that on my social media and stuff as well. So I think being authentically who you are is really going to help you in your business. And I think that really translates to what you want your business to be like and the kind of clientele you want to attract.
What is your professional goal with this venture?
Oh, I don't know if I have a timeline for this, but I definitely want to scale. I want to do less working in the business and working more on the business in terms of building a brand that's bigger than just me and being able to hire more people so I can help more women. And I think that's something I'm really struggling with, is because, like I had mentioned, is I don't know if anyone's going to care as much as I do, which is probably why I haven't hired anybody yet. But that's something that's definitely one of my big goals, is scaling, being able to coach more and more women. If I have 5 coaches, I can coach so many more women. I can have more program offerings. If I have someone who's a physical therapist on board, she can focus on rehabilitation programs. So someone with knee issues or someone who's had like a knee. So having, I think, expanding a little from just nutrition and fitness and having these smaller things might also help.
But do you have a monetary goal?
Monetary goals, I do want to hit, like I was very close to 6 figures. So I would say a 6-figure goal this year is probably my goal.
Got it. Okay. A good one. So what is your personal goal in life?
Personal goal, I think, my biggest goal is to travel more. And that's something I was telling my husband as well, is we got married and had kids like 2-3 years later, but we were also just settling into the US and things like that. So we didn't really spend time traveling. And I think even to connect it to my professional goal, I want to do this job. Yes, I want to help women and things like that. But the big reason I want to earn or make money is to be able to travel, and not for like I don't want a big house or 2 cars and things like that.
Yeah. Nice.
It's to travel more or take my kids on holidays and stuff.
So is this venture the most interesting thing that has happened in your life? Are you the most excited about this thing, or were there things in the past?
Yeah. I definitely think so. It's surprising that it is, but I get really excited. Like I actually am, for the first time in my life, I'm actually excited about the work I do. I actually like working, off hours, and I get tired, obviously, and sometimes it does take the energy out of you. But when you're excited about doing the work you do, it means you have a decent job.
Yeah, for sure. So, question around your content, which I was seeing on Instagram, which is you do something called Fun Friday. So, what is your concept behind that? Most interesting videos around eating Oreo.
Yeah, so honestly, I think it started during COVID. I like dancing, but I never thought my husband could dance. And so during COVID, we had once I think there were these dance trends going around at that time on TikTok and stuff. And it started there, and where we copied some video, and then it got pretty popular. And it's funny, but I have a huge part of my audience that I'm sure follows me for my husband, because he has a spoof account of my account where he talks about the exact opposite of what I say. So if I say eat more protein, he'll post something about, no, don't eat protein, eat more, and he'll show some Indian snacks and stuff.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's called Fat Dad Finzi. Check it out.
Nice. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so he just makes like fun of the stuff I post, but he definitely has a pretty decent popularity on my account for sure. Because I think, again, it's a relatability factor. People do, like women who I coach, they have husbands who don't let them focus on their fitness journey because they're buying snacks all the time. So I think, again, it's a relatability factor. But anyway, so the Fun Friday thing started with that. Like we would post some silly things, and people really liked it. And then we haven't done it recently, actually. Maybe we should, but we haven't done a video recently. But yeah, we just do these random things like some couple challenges and fun with the kids and stuff like that.
So through this journey of yours, who has been your support system?
I would say my husband for sure. Like I told you earlier, he is the one who pushed me and said, okay, you need to set up a website. You need to do this, because I definitely doubted myself a ton. I didn't know if I could do it. I was like, okay, there's no way. I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur or a business owner. And he was like, you're so passionate about it, just put all your eggs in one basket. So I would probably say he's my biggest supporter.
All right. Okay. So how do you handle highs and lows, Minakshi? Do you face them frequently?
Highs, I think I should handle highs better. I feel like I very hard on myself. I'm like, okay, this high is not high enough, or I could do better. But I think I definitely am very appreciative and grateful that people trust me. And I always tell people they thank me for helping them reach whatever goal they have. But I tell them that they are also a huge part of my journey. So I like that the highs of that client successes obviously is great. But even with business, like I didn't realize my husband says stuff like, okay, it's not easy to run a business when, the market in general is on the lower side. So people actually being willing to spend money to work with you is a huge deal. So I think I don't give myself credit for things like that, which I probably should do more of. But in terms of lows, I think over time it has got better with how I handle it. I just do things that I enjoy. The same thing that I said that people should do when they're stress eating or emotional eating, I do when I have those. Working out is my husband can see it. A lot of times he'll be like, please go work out, because he knows that's my like vent or outlet for stress or anything, or going for a massage just to take my mind off things, whether it's work stress or just life stress. I just like to do things that are solely for myself.
And your children are young, right? I'm sure they are learning a lot from whatever you guys are doing, you and your husband, right? What do you think they are learning? And are you proud of it?
I feel like they're maybe too young to learn things, but I also want them to see that, you should do things. Like I said, my husband's an engineer and he's obviously comes from that background, but he's also someone who's very creative. And so we have mutually agreed that no matter what our kids decide to do in their life from a profession perspective, we will be 100% supportive. And I think that's very important, especially from the generation we've grown up in, where we're obviously pressurized to be in a certain profession.
Right.
So I think that's one of the things that I'm hoping that they get from my own journey is doing things that you are truly passionate about.
Nice. So what is one book, movie, or song that you think everyone should experience?
I don't want to be boring and give like some habit building book, but one of the books that I do, but truly one of the books that I've really personally enjoyed and has helped me somewhat build better habits is a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear.
What would have been an alternate career for you if not in this field?
I still wish, and I think maybe this may have been a reason why I did a lot of this fitness and nutrition, is because though script writing and things like that is something I'm really interested in, after having kids, like my husband would tell me, why don't you write and stuff? With kids, your brain is never turned off. And with writing and any creative job in general, your brain needs to be empty to make space for the creative stuff. And I think so with the script writing, that was put on hold when I had kids. So maybe something in that line of work is
Got it.
writing your show or a movie or something like that.
Yeah. So what's your favorite show or a movie that you really enjoy?
So favorite shows would be Friends is like my all-time favorite, but also in the last couple of years, I've watched Schitt's Creek, and
Oh, wow, yes. We
yeah,
just
it's
covered that too. It's
yeah,
amazing.
it's really fun. Yeah, it's a show like I enjoyed it. I was surprised I enjoyed it actually.
Yeah, same here. So what's your favorite food?
Pasta like for every meal.
I was hoping in Indian food because you focus so much
No,
on
surprised.
Right.
Yeah, I do. I mean, we obviously eat a lot of Indian food, but I don't know what it is about pasta, but it's one of
Okay.
those foods I can eat every single day if I could.
Because it goes with wine. Maybe that's a
Not so much. I think I don't know. It's just maybe it's just the carbs.
nice.
But the other, okay, if I had to say an Indian food, it would probably be dosas.
Dosas. Yeah. Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
So fermented food, good for gut health and stuff. Okay. So what's your favorite exercise which you can easily motivate yourself to get up and do even if you're not in the mood?
It's not something I talk about a lot, but I actually really enjoy dancing. But in terms of like strength training and stuff like that, if someone tells me to do like a lower body workout, I'll be ready to do any day. Like I love squats.
Your journey today wouldn't have been possible without.
Like I said, if my brother-in-law hadn't taken me to the gym when I moved to the US, I probably would not have been here.
Or life, like very small thing, but life changing.
Right. Yeah. That's definitely, it was probably the thing that, because I would not have thought I would enjoy it.
Some cultural questions to finish off.
Sure.
Did you drive in India?
I did. I drive. The day I turned 18, I got my license in India.
Can you drive now if you go back since you've been so long in US?
I hate it. I never did when I go back to India now. I really hate it. I think I like the organization of driving here. It took me a while to get used to driving here, especially after driving in India. But now that I'm used to driving here, I act like I can't drive when I go back.
Yeah,
to India,
same here.
unless it's
Same
a
here.
super short distance.
Yeah, my brother got a new car and he was like, drive. I'm like, no, I don't want to hit
Yeah.
the car first.
Yeah. I know. And then you try to follow rules and then people honk at
Right.
you and stuff. It's too stressful.
In Hyderabad, traffic is worse. You have experienced
Yeah.
these.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shopping in a bazaar or shopping in a superstore, what do you prefer?
Superstore.
Okay. What is your favorite holiday place? What kind? Cities, beaches, mountains?
I think anything relaxing. I'm not okay. A little bit of adventure and stuff is fine, but I like holidays that are like relaxing, beaches or like spa type holidays and those kind of things are what I prefer.
Okay, so do you have water with ice or without ice in restaurants?
Without
Without,
ice.
Do you see temperature in Celsius or Fahrenheit?
Weather on my phone is still Celsius. Yeah.
Okay. So, tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Okay.
And even that was after I moved to the US. Back
Yeah,
home, I
that's
never drank tea or coffee.
Okay. Do you enjoy shopping with coupons or do you enjoy bargaining with vendors?
Oh my God, I'm a horrible bargainer. I hate bargaining.
Okay. Indian food variety versus US food variety. What do you prefer?
Indian food.
Okay. What is worse, winters in Colorado or summers in Hyderabad?
And bear summers and we honestly now when we go back to Hyderabad, even winter and like we usually go back December, Jan, even that feels too hot. Both my kids were like sweating when everyone else is wearing like sweaters and stuff in December.
Alright. Festivals in India or US? I think that's the easy one.
Yeah, India.
Okay. Do you miss any particular festival?
I think mostly Diwali in India we miss because one in Colorado, there's not a huge Indian community and there's not as many options. Yes, the temple, Hindu temple and stuff is there, but we don't really go for it. So I think just that whole family aspect of Diwali or festivals in general, I think is something we miss. And also because the kids are obviously growing up here, so they don't see that stuff
Right.
we used to do as kids for festivals.
So do you make a conscious effort to do certain things for your kids during those festivals? Do you do anything?
We do. We definitely do. And especially for the bigger ones, things like Ganesh Chaturthi or Diwali or Sankranti and things like that. We try to, especially my son, now that he's older, my husband does try to explain to him what the significance is and stuff like that. But they're still pretty young. But we do try to, like we try to involve them in whatever we do for that specific festival.
Do you prefer?
They don't like it. I will say that they definitely don't enjoy it. My son doesn't enjoy dressing up and things like that, but we try.
Okay. Okay. Do you prefer neighbors in US or neighbors in India?
I think neighbors in US, I just find people more friendly here. Like no one, I think obviously it's a US thing where people smile and behave and stuff. But yeah, so I think that friendliness is definitely.
Yeah, but do you get to interact a lot?
Yeah, pretty decent amount.
Like, nice. Yeah, I live in an apartment, so I haven't experienced that.
Right. I think it really depends. Yeah, because when we lived in an apartment, I think it was the same thing. We didn't really have much interaction.
Got it. Do you prefer yellow lights or white lights at home?
Yellow.
How has India changed for you?
I feel like that thing that we had, just the lifestyle we had when we were kids back home is very different. There's obviously a lot more traffic in Hyderabad and I don't know that there's like a lot of obviously infrastructure is good, but it's changed how we've grown up and that there's empty roads and things like that.
Yeah. Something that is in India, but not in US.
Family.
All right. Something that is in US, but not in India.
I'd say, like I said, safety for women, I find is a lot better. Obviously, any place is not however safe it is, but as a woman, I feel like I feel a lot more safe in the US.
Correct. Has your spice tolerance changed after coming to US?
Oh, yeah. I've never been someone who ate too much spice anyway. But
Okay.
like now when I go back to India, like even my home food gives me an upset stomach.
Okay. Have you encountered any stereotypes about Indians in US?
Not when I moved after I got married, but when I studied in LA, we had a very racist teacher
Okay.
who gave me an extra slice of pizza. He said, "Oh, because you're all hungry," or some crap like that. So, yeah,
Oh.
some racism back in LA. I think LA in general tends to be a little more racist. Colorado is surprisingly in touch. I have not dealt with any like
Okay.
stereotyping or.
Got it. How do you address them? They just
I think when I studied, I was too young and it didn't hit me till much later that, okay, he was being racist. So I never ended up doing anything. I think now if someone said something, I would probably stand up and say, okay, that's not how it is. And you're just stereotyping.
okay.
Nowadays, I have no problem standing up to people and being rude. And there was a time I would just be nice and polite to everybody, but I'm not like that anymore.
Okay. What advice would you give a new immigrant from India who's coming to US?
Embrace the change, because I think people move here thinking, oh, I can try to make the same life that I had back home. But I think it's important to understand that life here is very different. And the sooner you embrace it, the easier it gets.
Got it. Okay. Would you be comfortable sharing the range of how much you make right now per month?
It varies, but between 4 to 6. Yeah. Some are better than others, but yeah, I would say that's the average.
Got it. And how long are your programs usually?
So I do offer 3, 6, and 12 months. I think the 6-ish is where most people tend to choose, because I think like I said, I also market myself as a more sustainable coach. So they don't expect quick fixes.
Okay. Got it. Minakshi, I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you
too,
so
Jay. It was
much.
really nice talking to you, of course.
Good
Yeah.
luck in your journey.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you know someone whose hustle inspires you, reach out to me on pod.dhustlers@gmail.com so that I can bring them as a guest on my show and share their journey with others. Thank you.